Robert Saleh spoke earlier today at the NFL owners meeting. So some quotes there from him that we want to get into. And let's start first with that Robert Saleh speaking. And to me, my biggest takeaway from that is Robert Saleh kind of denies the need to make the playoffs and then follows it up with, yeah, I guess you could say we have to win this year. So for full context, they flat out asked, is it a failure if you guys don't make the playoffs in 2024? He says no, and then kind of immediately follows it back with saying that right now, if we don't win, it's we suck, and you suck until you win. Is paraphrasing here, but he then walks it back. So my question is, which is it? Like, do you have a playoff mandate or not? But I think I would hope at least that he's self-aware enough that he realizes that this Jets team has to be a playoff team in 2024 if he wants to be coaching again next year.
Yeah, you would hope he's able to realize that. And I just think that for the Jets, I mean, it couldn't be more obvious that this is a win now team. You made the trade for Aaron Rodgers. If you bring him over here and you go through 2 seasons with barely any winning and you don't make the playoffs, then the whole thing is just one big waste. So you'd have to imagine that Robert Saleh has some idea of that. And I thought another interesting quote that he had, Matt, that I want to kind of hear your thoughts on was, he mentioned something about how they looked into adding more talent to the offensive coaching staff, but then decided that they were good with what they had. I have to imagine most Jets fans don't feel like they are good with what they have on the offensive coaching staff.
No, definitely not. For me, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. But I think what ended up happening there was that he maybe was looking to add a bigger name guy. Like, supposedly they were in on Arthur Smith because the Jets just love to take any former Tennessee Titan offensive coach and just add them to their staff. They did it with Tony Dews. They have Keith Carter. They have Todd Downing. Like, they have a lot of former Tennessee Titan offensive coaches on this staff. But I think once that went down the drain, and probably because nobody wanted to come in and hitch their wagon to Todd Downing, Keith Carter, and Nathaniel Hackett, they said, all right, well, our plan is going to be that Aaron Rodgers comes in and fixes it, which I think is part of the frustration for me, is that they are very much so relying on Aaron Rodgers to be that big fix. And I'm not saying that he can't be. Like, obviously he is talented enough to where he can come in and help mitigate, some of the problems on the offensive side of the football. But they're basically saying we need you to be the reason why this offense has success, because as we saw last year, granted, quarterback play was really bad, but I don't think Keith Carter, Todd Downing, or Nathaniel Hackett are elevating anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I thought it was a little bit of a disaster last year on that offensive staff, and it seems like it's Aaron Rodgers has a great season or it's bust for the Jets. And I think that could probably open up a larger discussion about how confident should we be in Aaron Rodgers coming off of the torn Achilles. I think that there's not enough conversation about that personally. And, we'll of course direct criticism at Robert Saleh and the staff, but I think that there is a lot to be said about how the Jets right now are just putting all of their eggs in this Aaron Rodgers basket, is how it feels to me. And I know that they went ahead and signed Tyrod Taylor, which we've praised that move before, give them some stability in the backup quarterback spot. But I just wonder how good Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming off of that injury with this offensive coaching staff. I definitely have my questions about this whole situation.
Yeah, totally fair. We'll get into that in a second. While you were talking, I wanted to pull it up. The quote. I don't know if you hear it.
When you lose, you're a loser. I suck. Joe D sucks. We all suck. So it goes with the territory.
When you lose, you're a loser. I suck. We suck. We all suck. It's funny, but you're not wrong to bring up the Aaron Rodgers discussion, because I think it's a fair one to have, right, with this guy missing an entire season last year at his age. What's he going to look like coming off the Achilles? There obviously is a little bit of not a little bit, a big question mark, and that's kind of the Jets offense as a whole with most of their additions. Tyron Smith is a question mark because of his injury history. Morgan Moses played through a torn pec last year, which is just wild, but there's a question mark there. Same thing with Mike Williams, and they're banking on a lot of these things to hit. So it feels very boom or bust, and there is bust potential. I think even if Aaron Rodgers isn't his normal self, which I think we could all agree his normal self is an elite level quarterback in this league, I think if he's a top half of the league quarterback for this team, that should be enough to get them over the hump and into the playoffs just because of how good this defense is on paper. They have a good special teams unit, and it really felt to me, at least last year, that they're really hamstrung by the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And I'll say I think that Tyrod Taylor could be good enough to win some starts and maybe even have this team being a fringe playoff team if it comes down to it, if Rodgers were to get injured again. I think that this roster is so stacked across the board, as we've kind of been mentioning on the show recently. And that really should elevate the expectations for Robert Saleh. And it should be what makes this team playoff or bust. And so I think it's interesting that he doesn't feel like the playoffs are completely necessary this year. But I think optically to everybody else from the outside looking in, that has to be the case. This team needs to make the playoffs. This roster is too good. And then even just looking at it from a long-term team building standpoint, you've got some good contracts here that are going to start expiring soon as these younger players continue to age and get through their rookie deals and everything like that. So I think that making the postseason is absolute necessity.
Absolutely. And just going back into, again, the comments, Connor Hughes, who covers both the Jets and the Giants, tweeted out just the sequence of tweets is very funny. So starting here at the bottom, Jets head coach Robert Saleh asked if the season is one where anything short of a playoffs is a failure. I'll never say that. And then follows the next two up. Jets head coach Saleh asked if he agrees the premise that a coach in his fourth season has to make the playoffs. I guess you could say that. And then winning off season doesn't matter. You have to win football games. So eventually he gets there, right? Like, it just took him a few. Eventually we get to the finish line there. But the reality is, like, we could like what Joe Douglas has done this offseason and putting the Jets in a position to succeed. We could like what Robert Saleh has done on the defense. Still some questions about whether, if he can manage a game as a head coach. But Saleh's in his fourth season. Joe Douglas is in his sixth season now as the Jets general manager. For both, in my opinion, not just one or the other, but for both these guys, it's win or go home.